Imagine watching a man just go down in flames for unspeakable crimes. Like, his career is ruined, his reputation is ash, the police are actively circling him.
Right.
And the person fighting the absolute hardest to defend him, the person frantically calling him in secret to offer support and comfort, is his primary victim.
It completely defies our basic understanding of human survival instincts. It really does.
Exactly. I mean, why does a victim fiercely protect her abuser? Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We have a monumental mission today for you listening. We are unpacking the harrowing, brilliantly complex, and frankly just terrifying excerpts from Kate Elizabeth Russell's novel, My Dark Vanessa.
It is a heavy one.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, I have a massive stack of sources right here on the table, excerpts, psychological character studies, critical analyses, and this material is incredibly dense. It's this absolute labyrinth of memory, trauma, and really the lengths a human mind will go to in order to survive.
And before we step into that labyrinth, we really have to examine the doorway the author built. The front matter of this novel provides the critical context for everything that follows.
Yeah, the disclaimer.
Exactly. The author includes a very explicit disclaimer. She notes that while she herself grew up in Maine and attended a private day school, this book is purely a work of fiction.
Right, she's not telling her own secret history.
No, not at all. Nor is she exposing the secret history of her real-life teachers. She makes that incredibly clear from page 1.
She explicitly states she's recast the narrative of modern news stories through her own imagination. And she lists 3 specific influences that we really, really need to understand to grasp this story.
Let's hear them.
So she lists critical trauma theory, the pop culture and post-feminism of the early 2000s, and her own complicated feelings toward Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita.
Right, and let's actually break down what those influences mean in the context of this story, because they are essentially the invisible engine driving Vanessa's behavior.
I mean, critical trauma theory alone is a huge piece of this.
It is. When we talk about critical trauma theory in literature, we are talking about how trauma isn't stored in the brain as a neat chronological story. It doesn't have a clear beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, it's messy.
Very. It's stored as visceral shards, like a smell, a sudden feeling of panic, a disconnected image. The novel is structured to reflect that fragmented, deeply intrusive nature of memory.
And then there's the post-feminism of the early 2000s. For you listening, I want you to think back to the turn of the millennium. It was this bizarre cultural moment of hypersexualization that was somehow packaged as empowerment.
Oh, absolutely. The low-rise jeans, the pop stars.
Yes. The idea was that if a young girl was sexually alluring, she was automatically the one in control. That specific cultural air is what our protagonist is breathing. It primes her to believe that being desired by an older man isn't victimization, it's a superpower.
Precisely. Which brings us to the dedication of the book, which reads, "For the real-life Dolores Hayes' and Vanessa Wye's, whose stories have not yet been heard, believed, or understood."
And Dolores Hayes, just to clarify for everyone, is the actual birth name of the character Lolita from Nabokov's novel.
Right. And Vanessa Wye is our protagonist.
So let me give you the lay of the land, the core conflict that drives this entire psychological thriller. We are going to be bouncing between 2 very distinct timelines.
The past and the present.
Exactly. First, the years 2000 to 2006. We meet Vanessa as a 15-year-old sophomore at the elite Broick School in Maine, where she becomes deeply entangled with her 42-year-old English teacher, Jacob Strane.
A near-perfect 30-year age gap, which Vanessa herself chillingly calculates in the text.
Yes, she does the math. And then we have the second timeline, which is 2017. Vanessa is now 32 years old, and she is watching from the sidelines as her former teacher, Jacob Strane, gets swept up in a massive wave of public allegations.
Ignited by another former student, a woman named Taylor Birch.
Right. So we have the past, where the foundation of this psychological architecture is built, and the present, where that architecture is facing an absolute hurricane. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's go back to the year 2000 to the Broick School and look at the exact anatomy of how this begins.
To understand the mechanism of what happens, we really have to set the scene. It's rural Maine. The Broick School is an elite, highly isolated boarding school.
The classic dark academia aesthetic.
Very much so. Think white clapboard buildings, brick pathways, an intimidatingly perfect, wealthy campus. It's a closed ecosystem.
And right in the middle of it is 15-year-old Vanessa. And she is profoundly, achingly isolated. The text details how she just had a massive falling out with her freshman year roommate and best friend, Jenny.
So her entire support system is just gone.
Completely gone. So she is lonely, And to make matters worse, her mother is actively pressuring her to be social.
Mm.
Her mother literally uses Vanessa's own 8th-grade argument about the school's, quote, social fabric against her.
Right, pushing her to not just sit alone in her dorm room.
Yeah, she's adrift. She feels like an absolute misfit. The sources describe her as intensely observant of everyone around her, like analyzing their social dynamics. But she feels entirely unseen herself.
She describes sneaking back to her dorm room on the first day of classes just to cry from the overwhelming, suffocating pressure of it all. It's palpable.
And into this void steps Jacob Strane. He's the head of the English department, 42 years old. And physically, he is imposing.
The text is very specific about his physical presence.
It is. It notes that he isn't fat, but he's big, broad, and so tall that his shoulders hunch. Almost like he's apologizing for taking up so much space.
He gives this booming convocation speech about young people being on the cusp of great things. He's wiping sweat from his forehead with a red bandana.
He's commanding. He takes up all the oxygen in the room.
But he doesn't approach Vanessa with immediate, aggressive physical advances. That's a crucial point.
Right, he doesn't corner her in a hallway on day one.
Exactly. If he had, she likely would have run. That's not how this level of manipulation works. He uses a much more sophisticated, insidious lure. He uses literature.
Wait, hold on. I need to push back on this because I'm struggling with the mechanics here. Literature.
Yes, literature.
I mean, if a 42-year-old guy wants to groom a teenager, handing her a dense Sylvia Plath poetry book feels like a terrible strategy. How does assigning her extra English homework actually trap her?
What's fascinating here is how Strane uses literature not as homework, but as a secret language to cultivate a highly exclusive identity with Vanessa.
Oh, like an inside joke, but with classic literature.
Exactly. He gives her Sylvia Plath's Ariel, specifically marking the poem Lady Lazarus, then Emily Dickinson, then Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Heavy, intense stuff for a sophomore.
Very. Think about the themes of those poets. Deep, misunderstood sorrow, intense passion, rising from the ashes. He is testing her intellectual and emotional waters, seeing if she responds to themes of dark, exceptional suffering.
Oh, I see. He doesn't treat her like a child. He does the exact opposite.
Okay. He elevates her.
Yeah, he tells her she has genius-level emotional intelligence. He tells her she writes like a prodigy. And crucially, he tells her that she's a dark romantic, just like him.
Precisely. And for a girl who feels like a bizarre, awkward outsider among her peers, that is intoxicating.
I bet.
Being told by an imposing intellectual adult that she is actually vastly superior to everyone else in the room, that she possesses a unique darkness that only he can understand, it's an incredibly potent psychological drug.
He completely ignores the 27-year age gap by elevating her to his supposed level of maturity.
He makes her feel like an equal.
I want to introduce an analogy here, because reading these excerpts, it felt exactly like watching a master tailor build a bespoke suit.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, Strane is taking her measurements, right?
Right.
Her loneliness, her desire to be special, her intellect, he's cutting the fabric to fit her perfectly. It flatters her.
But it's a trap.
Exactly. The moment she puts it on, she realizes it's actually a cage. It's a straitjacket designed to look like a tuxedo.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Because once she's wearing that suit, he starts providing historical literary precedent to normalize the dynamic.
He brings in the heavy hitters.
He does. He tells her that her name, Vanessa, was actually created by the Irish writer Jonathan Swift for a woman named Esther Van Homry.
And what's the significance of that?
Well, Esther was a woman who was 22 years younger than Swift, and Swift was her tutor. He actually shows her the poem Swift wrote about it, called Cadinus and Vanessa.
He's practically giving her a syllabus on why their relationship is destined. He's saying, look, we aren't deviants sneaking around a high school. We are part of a grand, tragic, intellectual tradition.
He intellectualizes the abuse.
And then, of course, he introduces the ultimate text, Nabokov's Lolita. He literally gives her his own personal dog-eared copy.
And later, he brings in Nabokov's Pale Fire. He physically points to a line in the text that reads, "My dark Vanessa, crimson barred, my blessed, my admirable butterfly," and he reads that to a 15-year-old girl with red hair.
He makes her feel like she was literally written into existence for him. It's not a crush, it's cosmic destiny. But once that intellectual and emotional trap is fully set, the physical escalation begins.
And what's terrifying is that it happens in plain sight.
Yes. Let's look at the scene in the office behind his classroom. They're having a conference, ostensibly discussing a poem.
Right, a perfectly normal teacher-student interaction on the surface.
But then he reaches under the desk and pats her knee. He asks, "Do you like this?" And he slides his hand up her leg, and Vanessa, terrified, just clamps her legs shut.
But she doesn't tell him to stop. She doesn't scream, she just freezes.
Which is such a common trauma response.
It is, and this is where Strane executes an absolute masterclass in manipulation. When she freezes, he immediately retreats.
He backs off.
He slides out of his chair, kneels on the floor, and lays his head in her lap. And he delivers this incredibly terrifying paradox.
I remember this part from the sources.
He tells her, "I'm going to ruin you," but in the exact same breath, he insists, "You decide what we do."
I had to read that line 3 times. It is so insidious. He is placing the entire moral weight of the relationship onto the shoulders of a 15-year-old child.
He's playing the helpless victim of her irresistible allure.
Exactly. By saying, "I'm going to ruin you," he acknowledges the destruction he's causing, which makes him look honest, tormented, and self-aware to her.
But by saying, "You decide what we do," he creates a total illusion of agency. If she continues, she has to believe it's her choice, her power.
So she builds her entire reality around that illusion of power, which is what makes the transition to the 2017 timeline so incredibly jarring.
We jump forward. Vanessa is now 32.
Right. And the promised greatness, the genius-level destiny Strane assured her of, it hasn't materialized at all.
Not even close.
She's working as a hotel concierge in Portland, Maine. She's living in a messy, chaotic apartment. She's self-medicating heavily with weed, alcohol, and Ativan.
And this fragile reality is completely shattered when Taylor Birch, a former student who is a decade younger than Vanessa, posts a public accusation against Strane on Facebook.
The excerpts detailing Vanessa's real-time reaction to this post are just visceral. You can physically feel her panic.
She's getting ready for work, right?
Yeah, she's putting on her uniform, curling her hair, and obsessively refreshing the page on her phone, watching the likes climb. 200 shares, 400 shares, thousands of likes.
Her physical reaction is intense. Her body knows the truth. She literally throws up in the staff bathroom at her hotel. She's experiencing severe, debilitating anxiety.
But psychologically, her immediate, overwhelming instinct is to defend Jacob Strane.
She secretly texts him. She calls him.
She reassures him that Taylor Birch is a liar. She tells him, "Everything she wrote is a lie. You know where I stand."
And she provides him with the exact comfort he demands. He tells her he needs her on his side. And she falls right back into line, despite the fact that they haven't actually spoken in months.
So this brings us back to my opening question, and I want you, the listener, to really think about this in the context of human behavior. Why?
Why defend him?
Why would a 32-year-old woman fiercely defend the 42-year-old man who started sleeping with her when she was a 15-year-old child? Here's where it gets really interesting.
To answer that, we have to look at Vanessa's sessions with her therapist, Ruby.
Right, because she is in therapy.
She is, initially to deal with grief over her father's death. But as therapy does, the conversations inevitably circle back to her foundational trauma. And Vanessa is adamantly, fiercely opposed to the word abused. She actively, aggressively rejects it.
She tells Ruby that Strane was careful, that he was good to her, that he, fell at her feet. She insists that she wasn't a victim, she was insatiable.
She frames Strane as a weak, pathetic man whom she practically tortured with her allure.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the psychological load-bearing walls of Vanessa's identity.
Right, her whole sense of self.
For 17 years, her entire self-concept has been built on the narrative that she was a dark, exceptional muse. She was the one student who possessed the emotional genius to understand this complex, tragic man.
If she admits that she was abused, if she accepts the label of victim, that entire architecture just collapses.
Let's relate this to something we all experience, obviously on a much smaller scale. The sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, that's a great connection.
You, the listener, have probably stayed in a bad job or a bad relationship or even just finished reading a terrible book simply because you had already invested so much time into it. To quit is to admit you wasted that time.
Yeah, it hurts the ego.
Now multiply that mundane feeling by your entire fundamental identity. To admit she was abused means admitting that her great love story was just a predatory transaction.
Precisely. It means admitting that she wasn't a powerful, dark enchantress who possessed a man's soul. She was just a vulnerable, lonely kid who was used by an adult.
The psychological cost of that realization is simply too high for her to bear.
It would mean that all the pain, the profound isolation, the completely derailed potential of her adult life, it was all for nothing. It wasn't a grand tragedy, it was just a mundane crime.
It's survival by delusion. She clings to absolutely anything that proves her active participation. There's this chilling internal monologue from her college years where she adopts a horrific joke she heard from a roommate.
Oh, the joke about willingness.
Yeah, the joke is, you can't rape the willing. And Vanessa weaponizes that horrifying logic against herself. She constantly reminds herself that she dressed up for him, that she shut the classroom door, that she wrote him love poems.
She uses her own conditioned compliance as concrete proof of her agency.
She literally says to herself, I'm not a victim because I've never wanted to be, and I don't want to be, then I'm not. That's how it works.
It's a desperate, exhausting attempt to maintain control over a narrative where she actually had zero power.
So she's built this fortress of delusion to survive. But a fortress only works if the outside world doesn't breach the walls.
What the walls do get breached.
How long does that delusion hold up when other people start seeing the truth? Because this grooming didn't happen in a vacuum. Let's look at how the adults in the room handled this. We need to explore the 2001 investigation at the Berwick School.
Yeah.
Because they almost got caught.
They did. And the institutional complicity detailed in these sources is just staggering. It starts when rumors begin to circulate on campus.
Jenny, Vanessa's former best friend, realizes what's happening.
Exactly. She sees Strane grab Vanessa aggressively by a van during a school field trip. Jenny tells her father, who happens to sit on the school's board of trustees.
Of course he does.
And the father writes a formal letter demanding an investigation.
So the headmaster, Mrs. Giles, calls them in. And I want to really dissect this scene because it is an absolute masterclass in betrayal.
It's awful to read.
Leading up to this, Vanessa is terrified. Strane has been feeding her these apocalyptic visions of what will happen if they are ever discovered. That he'll be sent to a brutal prison, and she will be shipped off to a horrifying foster home for juvenile delinquents where her life will be over.
He plants this deep, paralyzing fear of the state system into her head.
And then the meeting happens. Mrs. Giles, Vanessa's parents, and Strane sit in the headmaster's office. And Strane walks in wearing a tweed blazer, smelling cleanly of shower gel. He was perfectly calm.
He doesn't confess in a fit of romantic passion. He doesn't protect her.
No. He completely, ruthlessly, with bureaucratic precision, throws 15-year-old Vanessa under the bus.
He had actually prepared typed memos in advance.
I couldn't believe that part.
One memo called her a, quote, bright but emotionally troubled girl who had developed an inappropriate crush on him. Another memo meticulously documented her hanging around his classroom.
Creating a false paper trail to cover his own tracks.
Exactly. He paints her as an unhinged, obsessed teenager who is trying to destroy his spotless reputation.
And we have to ask why Mrs. Giles, representing the institution, so eagerly accepts this narrative.
It's the mechanics of institutional self-preservation. Strane is a respected, Harvard-educated male teacher. He brings prestige to the school.
While Vanessa is an awkward, isolated, highly emotional teenage girl.
Right. To Mrs. Giles, the math is simple. The institution protects its asset and sacrifices the liability.
But hang on, this is the part that always breaks my brain. If Strane is the one turning on her, and the school is ready to sweep it under the rug, why does Vanessa go along with it?
It's hard to fathom.
Why does she take the fall? That defies every survival instinct. If the guy you love stabs you in the back in front of the principal, why do you bleed quietly for him?
Because the trap has already been sprung. Remember the fear he planted in her about foster care, and remember the bespoke suit.
Right, her identity is tied up in it.
Her identity is tied to being his protector, his dark romantic equal. If she exposes him, she destroys the man she thinks she loves. She risks the foster care threat he invented. And worst of all, she proves that she wasn't a powerful equal.
She proves she was just a stupid kid who got tricked. So she stands in front of her classmates and lies. She humiliates herself to protect the man who just threw her to the wolves. And the result? She is expelled from Berwick in disgrace. He keeps his job, his reputation, and his freedom.
Which brings us back to the 2017 media reckoning. Because as we see time and time again, the past rarely stays buried forever.
Especially not in the internet age.
Right. Eventually, following Taylor Birch's initial post, 4 more women come forward. 5 accusers in total, spanning nearly 2 decades. 2 recent graduates and 2 current students. The state police officially open an investigation.
And the text portrays the media reaction to this exactly as we've seen it play out in reality over the last several years.
The author ensures a very clinical, impartial description of the polarization, almost acting as a mirror to society.
Yeah, and we really want to just impartially report on how the sources describe this because it's a very accurate reflection of the cultural climate. On one side, you have people championing Taylor Birch as a hero. They're using raised fist emojis, sharing her post with messages of unwavering support and solidarity. Believe Women becomes the rallying cry across social media.
And on the other side of that same coin, the text describes a severe immediate backlash. Think pieces begin to populate the internet debating the dangers of accusations without due process.
Which we saw a lot of during that era.
We did. A prominent men's rights podcast devotes an entire episode to vilifying Taylor Birch, framing Strane as a victim of feminist overreach and a witch hunt. This rhetoric leads to a horrific campaign of online harassment against Taylor, including severe violent threats that eventually force her to completely scrub her online presence and vanish from the public eye.
It's an absolute circus. It's deafening noise. And right in the middle of it is Vanessa being relentlessly hounded by a journalist named Janine Bailey.
Janine writes for a publication called Femzine.
And Janine is pushy. She emails, she tracks down and calls the hotel where Vanessa works. And Janine speaks entirely in the modern, sanitized vernacular of trauma.
She uses buzzwords constantly. She uses words like survivor and telling your truth and reclaiming your narrative.
She tells Vanessa that she has a moral obligation to the movement, that her story is the missing puzzle piece that could help Taylor and hold the institution accountable.
But Vanessa is physically repulsed by this language. It makes her skin crawl. She literally vomits after getting off the phone with Janine.
Why is the language of empowerment making her physically ill?
This raises an important question about how society demands that victims perform their trauma in a specific, socially acceptable way. To Janine Bailey, Vanessa is not a complex human being. She is a data point.
A convenient statistic.
Exactly. She is a pawn that fits perfectly into a neat, highly consumable #MeToo narrative box. The world wants a clear predator and a pure, righteous survivor. But Vanessa's lived experience doesn't fit that box.
It's messy.
Her experience is incredibly messy, deeply complex, and filled with a twisted, profound sense of love and complicity.
Right. Remember my metaphor about the bespoke tailored suit? Janine Bailey is coming up to Vanessa and trying to shove her into a mass-produced, off-the-rack t-shirt that just says Survivor. And it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit at all.
Janine's language flattens Vanessa's entire reality. It asks her to sum up the defining, most psychologically complex relationship of her life into a neat little hashtag. Vanessa feels patronized. She feels like this journalist is trying to force her into a box labeled victim, which, as we know, is the exact box she has spent 17 years frantically trying to avoid.
She literally thinks to herself during these interactions, I wonder how much victimhood they'd be willing to grant a girl like me.
Because she knows her own actions.
Right, because Vanessa knows she was a willing participant in the mechanics of the affair. She knows she kept explicit Polaroids. She knows she defended him. She knows society's empathy for victims usually evaporates the second the victim admits to loving their abuser.
And this unresolved trauma, this absolute inability to fit into any of the narratives the world is offering her, haunts her relentlessly. This is a perfect time to examine the 2006 timeline, when Vanessa is a senior at Atlantica College.
This part is crucial for understanding her adult psychology.
Because this section reveals how deep the haunting goes. At this point, she is still secretly seeing Strane on occasion, but she is also taking a Gothic literature class with a professor named Henry Plow.
This section of the novel is profoundly disturbing to unpack. In Professor Plow's class, they are reading Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus.
A very dark play.
Extremely. Vanessa becomes utterly obsessed with the character of Lavinia. For those who aren't familiar with the play, Lavinia is brutally assaulted, and her attackers cut out her tongue and cut off her hands so she can't name them or write their names.
But she finds a way.
She manages to hold a stick in her mouth and write their names in the dirt.
It's a brutal image, and Vanessa draws a direct, obsessive parallel between the mutilated, silenced Lavinia and the silenced Dolores Hayes from Lolita. She writes this brilliant, impassioned paper on it. But what she's actually doing is trying to communicate her own unspeakable trauma through the safety of academic analysis.
She is seeking to recreate the dynamic she had with Strane, but with a new professor.
She actively pursues Henry Plow. She lingers in his office after class, just like she did with Strane. She dresses like a teenager, wearing baby doll dresses and putting her hair in braids, specifically on the days she knows she'll see him.
She tries to build an intense intellectual intimacy, pushing boundaries, hoping he'll cross a line.
Wait, let's pause here because this is the hardest thing for people to understand about trauma. If Strane ruined her life, why is she actively trying to recruit Professor Plow to do the exact same thing? Why is she seeking out the loop of her trauma?
It's a psychological phenomena often rooted in what Freud called repetition compulsion. When a person survives a profound trauma where they had absolutely no control, their subconscious will sometimes drive them to recreate similar dangerous situations.
Hoping for a different outcome.
Exactly. The underlying desperate hope is that this time they will be able to master the situation. This time they will be the one in control. Vanessa is trying to prove to herself that the strain dynamic wasn't abuse. It was just her natural, dark power over older men.
If she can make Henry Plow fall for her, it validates her bespoke suit.
Precisely. She even falsely hints to Henry that Strane is harassing her. She's perhaps hoping Henry will save her, or perhaps hoping it will trigger a protective, jealous, possessive instinct in Henry that mirrors Strane's predatory behavior.
But Henry Plow doesn't play the game.
He does not. He is a man of actual integrity. When he realizes the depth of her entanglement and the psychological danger she's in, he pulls away immediately. He is horrified. He tells her, "You're an enigma, impossible to understand."
He refuses to play the role she has written for him. He won't be the predator, and he won't be the savior. He maintains his professional boundaries.
And this rejection of her dark power leaves her totally unmoored. It proves that her bespoke suit is a lie.
Which brings us to the ultimate, devastating climax of the 2017 timeline, the present day. Strane is officially barred from the Browick campus. He is facing a massive state police investigation. The walls have completely closed in on him. His reputation is gone.
And so Jacob Strane commits suicide.
He kills himself, rather than face the public exposure, the trial, and the legal consequences of his actions. Throughout the relationship, he always told Vanessa he would rather be dead than live life branded as a pedophile.
And he makes good on that threat.
I look at his suicide as the final, inescapable trap. It's like he locked the door of her psychological cage from the inside and then swallowed the key.
That's a haunting way to put it.
By dying, he ensures that Vanessa can never confront him. She can never sit across from him as an adult and demand answers. She can never get closure. She is trapped forever with the ghosts of the man who built her reality.
She is frozen as the ultimate keeper of his secrets. Following his death, she still has the box of explicit Polaroids he took of her when she was a child in his home.
And her reaction to his death, sitting in her messy apartment looking at those photos, is chilling. She knows what they are. She says, "If I were smart, I'd burn everything, because I know how they'd look to a normal person, like something confiscated from a sex trafficking ring."
But she absolutely refuses to destroy them.
She says, "It would be like setting myself on fire."
Because her entire identity is so completely intertwined with his abuse. To destroy the evidence of it is to destroy herself. She cannot separate where Strane ends and Vanessa begins.
It's completely fused.
And crucially, even after his death, she is not furious at Strane for what he did to her or for abandoning her through suicide. She directs her rage outward. She says, "I'm mad at the world that turned him into a monster when all he did was have the bad luck of falling in love with me."
She protects his narrative until the bitter, devastating end. So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at the totality of these sources, My Dark Vanessa is not just a story about a bad man doing bad things.
It's much deeper than that.
It is a terrifyingly close, suffocating look at how the human mind will contort itself to survive trauma. It's about a victim who is forced to frame her own cage as a castle just so she can endure waking up inside it every single day.
It forces us to ask ourselves really difficult questions. How often do we cling to narratives that actively hurt us simply because those narratives are the foundational building blocks of our identity?
Right.
What lies do we tell ourselves because the truth would demand that we completely demolish and rebuild who we are from the ground up?
It's a profound, unsettling question. And it leads me to one final, incredibly provocative thought from the text to leave you with today.
Let's hear it.
During one of her darkest moments of reflection, when she is trying to rationalize everything that has happened to her, Vanessa scribbles a thought in her notebook. She writes, "Jailbait means having the power to turn a man into a criminal with just one touch."
It's a staggering rationalization of abuse.
Right. I want you to really think about that logic. If a predator can successfully convince a child that she is the one who holds all the power, that she is the one ruining him. Isn't that the most absolute, devastating form of powerlessness there is?
To be robbed not just of your autonomy, but of your ability to even recognize the theft. To be convinced that your surrender is actually a victory.
Exactly. It's the bespoke suit that fits so perfectly, so seamlessly, you never even realize it's locking you in. Thank you for joining us on this intense deep dive into the source material. We'll leave you to think on that.